And joining me here on TVP World today is General Sir James Everard, the former Deputy of the Supreme Command of the Allied Forces here in Europe. Thank you for joining me today on TVP World.
Thank you very much.
Now, looking at NATO, we have a big upcoming summit in Washington, D.C. this year. What do you think are going to be some of the most important decisions made there at that summit?
So I think at my level, one of the most important things will be the focus on implementing the new strategy and plans that our leaders have adopted. You'll have seen in Vilnius, right forces, right place, right time, the new force model, and of course, these plans. And I think they're good. I think they're clever, but they need to be underpinned by resource. And I think the commitment to do that is going to be a very important subject in Washington.
Now, concerning long-term support for Ukraine, we hear from a lot of politicians that NATO needs to come together with a comprehensive plan to show Vladimir Putin that NATO will, as all the politicians say, support Ukraine for as long as it takes. So in that guise, what do you think we'll hear coming out of that summit?
Well, without doubt, Ukraine and a long-term approach to Ukraine for the alliance will be a subject at Washington. I have no doubt about that. If you read the NATO strategic concept, which sets out vision and purpose, there's a wonderful paragraph at the end of the preface which sets out, our belief that nations have the choice to choose their own destiny, and I think that's important. And of course, G20 nations have made their own commitments, but I think a common voice through NATO would be a powerful thing to hear.
And how about that phrase that we hear so often from politicians to support Ukraine for as long as it takes? If we look at the frontline situation and what's just happened over the past 6 months in Ukraine and what could potentially happen, do the politicians need to upgrade their rhetoric?
I think what's so useful about conferences like this is you get to meet people. You also get to hear, I think, very honest debate. And we've had some great discussions from people who have huge knowledge of Ukraine, who have given us an honest appraisal of the situation and their concerns and the level of support that Ukraine will need. I think our leaders understand that. They haven't backed away from it. And so consolidating that idea in the minds of our populations, I think, is an important thing, and it came out very clearly in the debate over the last few days.
President Macron recently said, he touted the possibility that NATO troops could become involved in Ukraine. Is that more political?
That's a huge political decision, and interesting enough, I was talking about President Macron earlier today because he had that great, NATO is brain dead speech, and I think he's a great thinker, great, ideas man, but that's a very political decision, and I don't even see that being discussed openly in Washington.
The British, have said, I believe it was Sir Cameron that said the weapons that Ukraine receives that may be long range, long enough to hit the territory of Russia, that's up to the Ukrainians to make such a decision. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin has said that he will retaliate against and strike British weapons wherever they may be.
I think that's a very interesting announcement by our Foreign Secretary. And it represents probably a subtle shift in what people believe to be UK policy. And perhaps this is just the way you have to move the debate on.
Is it possible that, because there are British troops stationed right here in Poland, and as well as British weapons come through Poland and enter into Ukraine, could that potentially open the door for maybe targets in Poland being hit?
Well, I don't think so, because the whole idea of NATO is the whole idea of deterrence and defence. I think I mentioned those new plans, the NATO force model. I mean, NATO is so much stronger than it was in 2014, and I don't see the Russians wishing to open a conflict up with the alliance directly.
And so about those new force plans, for our viewers who may not be aware, can you put those in a nutshell for us?
Yes, I mean, very simply, NATO has identified the troops it needs and those types of troops it needs to fulfill the full range of NATO missions and tasks. And the NATO force model organises those troops at appropriate readiness to deliver the effects that the Supreme Allied Commander has said that he needs. And so, this is good. At last we have a concrete plan that gets the right troops to the right place at the right time. Mindful, because it's been a big subject of the debate here, that there are capability shortfalls that we need to close out. And Poland's probably the best example of a nation who is moving quickly to address those shortfalls.
Right, and what are those shortfalls when we look here at the eastern flank currently?
Well, I think you've heard your own defence minister here talking about the importance of long-range fires. We've just come from a presentation we're talking about the importance even of suppression of enemy air defences. There are recognised shortfalls, which again, I don't want to go complicated, but there is a NATO defence planning process which, if you like, brokers out to allies the capabilities that we need. That was updated in June 22 and is delivering those capabilities, which is good.
Which is good. Well, there's also been the Ukrainians. President Volodymyr Zelensky, if you recall back when one of the Russian missiles launched on Western Ukraine briefly crossed into Polish airspace. The decision was made not to shoot down the missile, and the Polish government has said that while they did that in order to, they didn't know where the missile would fall. President Volodymyr Zelensky and his administration have come out and said that they welcome Poland to shoot down any missile that may target Western Ukraine. Yeah. Would that be an escalation? Is that a Polish sovereign decision?
It's absolutely a sovereign decision of Poland. And of course, I think one of the powerful things about the alliance, is it's based on political commitment, but capitals retain their own decision-making authority. So it'd be Poland's decision. And I remember that story. I don't know enough details on it to comment.
Is it possible, though, that could be a provocative move to shoot down?
No, I think if Poland shot down a missile over its own sovereign airspace, it's entirely entitled to do that.
Well, what if it targeted missiles that looked like they may enter Polish airspace?
You can get into so many of these what ifs, and I think quite rightly, often people don't give you an answer because the ambiguity that not giving an answer creates some manoeuvre space. So I don't know.
We hear a lot about hybrid threats from Russia and potential sabotage by Russia or even terrorist acts here in Europe. How concerned should European citizens, various countries, be concerning this?
Well, I think NATO recognises two threats, Russia and terrorist groups, and so I think there's a concern about that. And of course, Russia has always had an idea of winning without battle. That you use all the tools at your disposal, so that if you have to fight, you've always given yourself an edge. And so I think we should be worried about hybrid attacks. And again, I've loved the focus in this conference on educating societies on the genuine dangers of those threats, because understanding is probably one of the most powerful tools to removing some of the power of that mechanism.
And within NATO's capacity, how should NATO prepare and respond to such hybrid attacks?
Well, NATO has counter-hybrid advisory teams. These are experts that understand the playbook, what they've seen come before. But again, capitals retain decision-making authority. Most capitals are, quite rightly look after their own resilience. And in my time as DSACR, you saw a lot of effort being put into resilience and NATO's efforts on baseline resilience objectives. So I think we're stronger than we were, but of course, one can always be surprised.
Okay, well, General Sir James Everard, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.